The shepherd went to fetch a little sack, and onto the table he emptied a pile of acorns. He began to examine them very carefully, one by one, separating the good from the bad, while I sat smoking my pipe. I offered to help, but he told me it was his work. Indeed, seeing how meticulously he carried out his task, I did not insist. That was the only time we spoke. When he had set aside enough acorns, he divided them into piles of 10. As he did this, he discarded the smaller ones, or those that were cracked, for now he was examining them very, very closely indeed. When finally there lay before him 100 perfect acorns, he stopped, and we went to our beds. Being in this man's company brought a great sense of peace, so the following morning I asked him if I might stay on and rest for the day. He seemed to find that quite natural, or rather, he gave me the impression that nothing could disturb him. The day of rest was not absolutely necessary, but I was intrigued and I wanted to learn more about him. He let his sheep out of the pen and led them to their grazing, but before he went, he took the little bag of carefully chosen acorns and soaked them in a pail of water. I noticed that for a walking staff he carried an iron rod, as thick as my thumb and about as high as my shoulder. Pretending to take a leisurely stroll, I followed him at a distance, keeping on a parallel path with him. The pasture for his sheep was down in a dell. Leaving his dog in charge of the little flock, he began to climb towards the place where I was standing. I feared he was coming to reproach me for my indiscretion, but I was wrong. It happened to be on his way, and he invited me to join him if I had nothing better to do. He was going a little farther on, to the top of the hill. When we reached his destination, he began to drive his iron staff into the ground to make a hole, dropping in an acorn and filling in the hole. He was planting oak trees. I asked him if he owned the land. He said no. Did he know who owned it? He did not. He thought it was common land, parish property, or perhaps it belonged to the people who did not care about it. That did not concern him. And so, with infinite care, he planted his 100 acorns. After the midday meal, he began to sort out more of his acorns. I suppose I must have been insistent enough with my questions, since he replied to them. For 3 years he had been planting trees in that desolate country. He had planted 100,000. Of the 100,000, 20,000 had come up. Of these he still expected to lose half, either to rodents or to any of the unpredictable things for which only Providence can account. That left 10,000 oaks to grow on this tract of land where before there had been nothing. It was then that I wondered about the man's age. He was clearly more than 50 years old, 55 he told me, and his name was Elziar Bouffier. He had owned a farm down in the lowlands, which had been his life. There he had lost his only son, and then his wife, and had withdrawn into this solitude where he was content to live quietly with his lambs and his dog. It was his opinion that the land was dying for lack of trees. He went on to say that he himself had nothing of importance to accomplish, so he had resolved to remedy this state of affairs. Although I was young, I too was leading a solitary existence at that time, and I felt I understood how to deal tactfully with reclusive spirits. But still I erred. Because of my youth, whenever I thought of the future, I thought only of my own, my search for my own happiness and no one else's. So I said that in time those 10,000 oaks would be magnificent, but it would take 30 years. He answered quite simply that if God were to grant him another 30 years of life, he would have planted so many more that the present 10,000 would be like a drop of water in the ocean. Already he was studying the growth of beech trees and had a nursery full of seedlings grown from beech nuts, which he protected from his sheep with a wire fence. They were quite beautiful. He was also thinking of birches for the dales, where he told me there was moisture just below the surface of the soil. The next day, we parted. With the following year came the First World War, in which I was engaged for 5 years. An infantryman was hardly likely to have trees on his mind, and, truth to tell, the whole encounter had not made much impression on me.